Moving on now, it's day 2 of the EU Leaders Summit in Brussels. They've kicked off what is set to be a months-long battle over the bloc's next long-term budget. Now, the European Commission proposing a €2 trillion budget between 2028 and 2034. The German Chancellor is leading a push against increased joint borrowing, whilst others like France sit in the opposing camp, pushing for ambitious common investment in things like technology and defence. Armen Georgian joins us from the summit. Armen, talk us through today's talks.
Yeah, well, let's understand one thing. There isn't supposed to be an agreement on the EU budget today. I mean, it's a huge thing. The EU Council President, Antonio Costa, wants an agreement by the end of this year, but some of the national delegations here are signaling that that's very ambitious. But it is a budget that covers 2028 to 2034, so there has to be some momentum in these talks now over the next few months. And of course, they're trying to give those talks a bit of a push here at this EU summit. That €2 trillion euro figure that you gave, Cami, that is, of course, the European Commission's proposal. There are countries that want that figure to come down. They think it's too much, and we're seeing a familiar divide here between the so-called frugal countries and the so-called friends of cohesion. Cohesion meaning policy that makes sure that no region in Europe is left behind. It's not exactly a north-south divide, but broadly we are hearing some noises more from countries further north, like the Netherlands or Sweden, that we need smart spending rather than more spending. One thing's for sure, the stakes are huge. The EU has to finance so many more things than it did in the past, particularly on defense and military-industrial complex, things like that, for obvious reasons. But they also have to find a way of not sacrificing too much, things like social policy, cohesion, agriculture. So a big battle ahead there in the next few months.
Armen, this is the second day of the summit. Can you walk us through what was achieved on Thursday?
Well, they talked until late into the night about China, but interestingly, the word China doesn't actually figure in the summit conclusions on China. The new name for China is global macroeconomic imbalances. So talk about an elephant in the room. There's such a wide variety of views on China in this EU Council, Kemi. You've got, for example, the Spanish Prime Minister saying that China could be a potential ally for the EU, and then the leader of Luxembourg saying that China is an existential threat to European industries. So with that huge range of opinions, it was obviously going to be difficult to get more than vague language into the summit conclusions about continuing to engage with our most important partners, that means China, but also getting ready with a new trade defensive toolbox. And that is what the European Commission is going to be working on, to see what countermeasures it might propose, because the basic underlying point behind all this is that there is a €360 billion trade deficit between the EU and China, and something clearly has to be done about that.
Now, EU leaders also agreed to renew sanctions against Russia over its war in Ukraine for 12 months, didn't they? Was this easy for them to agree on?
Well, it was easier than it had been when Viktor Orban had been Prime Minister of Hungary. I mean, there's a completely new dynamic here at the EU Council with the change in government in Hungary and Peter Magyar as Prime Minister. For the first time in more than a year, all 27 countries signed the summit conclusions on Ukraine. So that's already a kind of symbolic difference from what had happened before. And actually, it's more than symbolic, because of course there is now this backing for Ukraine to join the European Union, which again was something that Viktor Orban was broadly blocking when he was Prime Minister. But I think to nuance that a bit, there's no deadline on when Ukraine should start negotiations on 5 clusters, as they're called. President Zelensky, who was here on the first day, clearly wants to push that process forward as fast as he can. But in the summit text, they don't talk about a specific date. They say it's a merit-based approach. So I think they're sort of pulling back a bit on this very fast timetable that Zelensky wants to pursue when it comes to Ukraine.